Hi everyone, it's Alyssa, and this is Always Cinema Chic, the place that encourages you to go out, get dressed up, and watch a movie. So like so many people that are my age, if the mere mention of the TV miniseries It is murmured, I absolutely shudder. This was the most terrifying movie in the world to me when I was a kid. It's what taught me what true fear actually feels like. So every day when I would walk to the bus stop, which was all the way down the block, and I would walk there by myself because your parents didn't walk you back then, back in those days, I would pass several grates to get there. And after I saw it for the first time, that walk that I had to the bus stop was just never the same again. So I made a promise to myself when I found out that Warner Brothers was remaking it. I said that I will absolutely not put myself through that again, and I will never watch this movie. And I can say with absolute certainty that I am so happy that I broke that promise, because this version of it is most definitely a classic. So this version of the film stars Jaeden Lieberher, Jeremy Ray Taylor, Sophia Lillis, Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, and Bill Skarsgard as Pennywise. And it's directed by Andy Muschietti, who did 2013's Mama, which was a film that I didn't think was that great or that scary, but it was really beautifully shot. But in all honesty, I can say that I am absolutely beside myself from this film. It's so beautiful and nostalgic and oddly really funny. It's very heartfelt and genuine and truly grotesque in so many ways. This film is so layered and complex, which is something that I don't remember from watching the TV miniseries, but that was 25 years ago. The only thing that really stuck with me from that is the fear that I carry around from the movie. But these characters are so interesting and developed, and you truly do care about them. And you get to see how there's all of these types of evil in the world. So there's the evil that you create in your head, but there's also the evil that truly does exist within the world. So this part of the story takes place from 1988 to 1989 in Derry, Maine, and it's about a group of preteen kids who very affectionately call themselves the Losers Club. And so the group starts out with Bill, Richie, Eddie, and Stanley, but then through a series of events, the group accepts all these new kids. So there's Ben, Beverly, and Mike. And what struck me about this story is that while it certainly does fit into the horror genre, it really is a coming of age story about the importance of friendship, connectedness, and finding your tribe. This group not only has to fight the horrors of Pennywise, who uses each of the kids' own greatest fears against them, but they also have to deal with the horrors of the adults and all of the bullies in the town. And let me just say that they are breeding a special kind of bully in Derry. These kids are awful. I don't want to say much more about the plot, but I will say that Derry seems to have a problem with missing persons. There are a slew of kids and teenagers who go missing, and this ragtag group of kids feels like they are the ones who are going to investigate it and see where this all leads. And of course, this all leads to a clown. And I don't want to say much more beyond that, except that this film is not afraid to tackle really delicate issues while at the same time retaining that sense of childhood innocence. And I really think this is what made the film so special. But what really surprised me so much was how funny this movie actually is. So the character Richie, who's played by Finn Wolfhard, gets all of the funniest lines. I I couldn't believe how much I was laughing during this movie, and I found that I was definitely laughing a lot more than in the past 3 comedies that I've seen put together. So I'm not really sure what that says about comedies in Hollywood right now, but I do know that this movie was surprisingly funny. But what I think actually put this over the top is the sheer artistry of the film. So the cinematographer is Chung Hoon Chung, who has done such films as Old Boy from 2003, the original one, not the remake, and Stoker, and he has such an incredible eye. This film definitely does not look like your traditional horror movie at all. So the color palette here, I don't know, I felt like it was really nostalgic and it was saturated all at the same time. There's the use of browns and yellows, they're absolutely everywhere, and of course we're getting the pops of red every single time that you see Pennywise and that ominous floating balloon that's throughout the whole movie. You're instantly dropped into a world that I feel is just so well composed and really fully fleshed out. The camera is constantly just floating behind the characters. I mean, there's just so much beautiful movement of the character in this film, but there was one shot in particular. It was a low angle shot of Bill right in the beginning of the movie, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it tells you everything that you need to know about the leader of this little group of losers, as they call themselves. Chung also is really playing around with shadows and light throughout the film, as Pennywise really does need to live in the dark, while the children, they really need the light in order to survive. What's also surprising is that the movie really isn't that frightening. I thought I was going to be terrified during this movie, but instead it's more beautifully grotesque, you know? So you get images of Pennywise moving around like a marionette, and yeah, you know, these are scary images, but there's also something very artistic and beautiful about it. And if every frame really is a painting in movies, then you are just going to be enveloped in a very macabre world of art, down even to an actual painting that comes to life and terrifies one of the children. And it's really reminiscent of Edward Munch's The Scream, you know. And I really also loved the soundtrack. It was so good. I feel like there are so many movies today that just will play the best of that decade when it's a period piece. But here the songs are very specific and they're not very obvious choices, and you get a lot of subtle references to the 80s, but they're never beating you over the head with it, and I thought that was so important to the story. But the thing that really just won me over was the casting. The kids in this movie, they are just incredible. They have chemistry that's better than most adults that I see in movies. And Jaeden Lieberher is so amazing as Bill. He gives him the right amount of innocence and strength, and he has a fight in him, and he's a very brave child. You know, I've seen him in a few movies now, so I saw him in St. Vincent's and Midnight Special, and I feel like he's just such a versatile actor. Like, he's only, I think, 14 years old, and he just understands subtlety so well. Here in this movie, he gives Bill that really natural stutter, which is just imperative to that character and who he is, and he plays him in such a genuine and effortless way. And I felt like all of the kids were just so genuine, and they fully realized their characters, and they all had such backstory, and none of the characters were a stereotype. And I think that's what made this movie, you know, just that notch above the rest. I mean, you have Richie, like I said before, who's just hysterical. Eddie, who's just so funny, and he's a hypochondriac. Mike is kind of introverted and self-reflective. Stanley is a bit obsessive, I would say. You know, then you have Ben, who's just a poet at heart, and Beverly, who's just so great. She's so strong and confident despite what her home life is. And these kids, they really did have chemistry that went on for days. And I do have to give a lot of credit to that with the writing, because they weren't afraid to fully flesh out these characters. And I felt that by doing that, you just made the story so fully dimensional, I would say. And I just want to take a second to talk about Bill Skarsgard, who really does just create such a new and unique vision for Pennywise, and I'm so glad that he did. I'll say, first of all, his voice is just unreal. It's really high-pitched, and it provides both this sense of playfulness and impending doom. Like, I didn't even know how he did that, but he did it. He has body movements that really do emulate that of a puppet, and he was just this character right down to the very tips of his fingers, which move with a kind of creepy gracefulness throughout. You know, no one can ever really play Pennywise the way that Tim Curry did, so I'm just really happy that Bill Skarsgard didn't even try to emulate him. He really did just make the character his own. And I'm also really happy that he's used very sporadically throughout the movie, and the character has very little dialogue, which I think is so effective, because every time he speaks, you really do get this sense of just like shock and horror, because it's such a strange voice. And this movie could never have had all of these great elements of filmmaking without having such a great director who's able to put all of this together. And I think that Andy Muschietti really showed how much love and care he took with this film. He seems to have such a love of the novel, and while I never read the novel, obviously, because I wasn't going to read something that just scared me so much, I still just kept getting the feeling throughout the movie that this is the essence of what the novel must feel like. And he really took that care to make a very special film that in some ways kind of felt to me like a horror version of Stand By Me, which is also another classic Stephen King novel. And I felt that I really was watching a classic film. You know, realism is always in the details to me, and the details are just here in spades, like right down to what's playing at the local cinemas. You have Batman, Lethal Weapon 2, and Nightmare on Elm Street 5. These movies, to me, all served as symbols within the movie. You should also keep an eye out for a picture of Tim Curry's Pennywise that's on the wall during the scene with all the clowns. It's a great little homage to the TV miniseries. And I really like that Muschietti has this love for the 1980s. I felt like I was watching a Steven Spielberg movie if Steven Spielberg made horror movies. And no, I do not consider Jaws to be a horror movie. I'm just concerned a little bit about audience reaction to this, because they really marketed this film to be a terrifying horror movie. I thought I was going to leave the movie theater crying, but it's not like that at all. Instead, it really gets you thinking about the fears that we have in terms of growing up. And there are a lot less jump scares, so you're really trading jump scares for meaningfulness, and I hope that people are okay with that. And so in terms of the grading, I do two types of grades. The first is film and artistry and how well it fits into the genre. And for that, I would give it an A. The cinematography is beautiful, the acting's phenomenal, and this is a cut above a traditional horror movie. And then in terms of watchability, which is how much I enjoy it, I would absolutely give it an A. I can't wait for the Blu-ray to come out. I'm going to watch it 1,000,000 times over. And one last thought I had is that the fears that you have when you're a child really aren't the same fears that you have when you're an adult. And I think that's the point of the movie. And so now I've been inspired to go back and face my fears from childhood and watch the TV miniseries of it. And something tells me that it's not going to be quite as scary as I remember it to be. So with that said, thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate you watching. If you have seen the movie, please leave a comment below and tell me what you think. Please like and subscribe. And remember, it's always in fashion to go out, get dressed up, and make it a cinema chic night. Thank you guys so much. Bye.